Hello, everyone. Books with Thanks back again, and I'm so happy to be joined by my good friend Jarrod from the Fantasy Thinker. Hello, Jarrod. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me, Alex. This is something I've been looking forward to talk about, as
Thank
always.
you. Yeah, yeah. So kind of a quick little background for everyone watching. Jarrod and I met at this past year's ICFA in person, and one series we talked about so many different wonderful fantasy series. One series that came up pretty frequently, a big reason why being that Stephen Donaldson was at the conference, but was Donaldson's Chronicles of Thomas Covenant series. At that point I hadn't read a page of his stuff, but Jarrod, you've read quite a bit of his works, and you uh, just through those conversations and how you describe these books. You really kind of motivated me, inspired me to finally kind of dive in this summer. So I've now just read book one in the first trilogy, the first Chronicles of Thomas Covenant, Lord Fal's Bane. Okay, oh, nice, nice. Is that a whole collection of the first?
That's the first
Oh,
three.
nice,
Yeah,
nice.
it's pretty cool.
But yeah, so thank you so much for kind of inspiring me down that road. Um, yeah, I guess maybe before I turn it over to you, because I'd love to hear how you got into the series, everything like that. Kind of a couple housekeeping thing notes. We'll start off pretty spoiler free, but then I'll kind of signal when we talk about more plot specific details, just so if you're new to the series like I was just a few weeks ago, you can still watch for a little while. Also, kind of brief, broad, the sense that I got of this book. If you have no idea what the story is about, it's basically Leper from our world gets pulled into a fantasy setting, and there's the evil Lord Fowl who, through his various schemes, is trying to influence our protagonist, the leper Thomas Covenant. Oops, sorry. Sorry. Uh, got a call, a spam call. I'll back up a second. Lord Fal's trying to influence the leper protagonist Thomas Covenant into hurting the Earth, into hurting the setting. And there's also this almost Gollum-like character named Drool Rockworm who's being manipulated as well. There's uh, a lot of different familiar kind of fantasy regions and cultures, but then there's also a lot of kind of unique, original, original inventions. That's kind of the broad gist of what I got from the first book. Who knows? Things could totally change in the later ones, as I'm sure you might be thinking of all the wonderful, crazy things that happen later. But yeah, for anyone who didn't know what the series is about, I hope that's kind of a an intriguing enough kind of hook or intro. How did it sound to you?
Yeah, no, I mean that pretty much covers it. It the thing that this series came out, this book came out in 1977, Lord Fowlsbane in particular, and so it's been almost 50 years almost since it was first released, and at the time, what we had were Tolkien imitators basically. The Shannara series and but I think there were other ones as well.
Sure.
And this, while it still has some of that fantasy, deep fantasy epic feel of Tolkien's work, this was something that I think was setting itself apart from Tolkien in the tropes that it was subverting and in a lot of ways. And it really felt I think it, it's such a unique take on that part of the fantasy epic fantasy of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I guess I should also say if anyone starts to read this, expect to maybe feel very uncomfortable. There's a lot of like it's intentionally like throwing you out of your comfort zone with those tropes is
Yes, yeah,
yeah.
that's exactly right. That's part of it is that
uh,
it's not a cozy read. It's not
right.
he's purposely making you uncomfortable the whole
Yeah, yeah. And
time.
even like 50 pages might go by where you don't think about a certain moment, but then it'll come roaring back, and there's gonna be there's yeah, massive reminders of all the kind of horrible things that have happened throughout the story up to that point. Again, without getting into specifics or spoilers. But yeah, so I guess I'd love to know how you discovered these books. Yeah, how
Yeah.
you discovered
Uh,
them, your kind of, yeah, your whole history with this
yeah,
series.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I got a question for you. How did
Yeah.
you avoid him up until now?
How do I avoid them? Well, so I that's a good question. I haven't really talked too much about my like fantasy sci-fi like reading history on here, but basically through high school, the only epic fantasy that I really read was Tolkien. Any like genre fiction I read outside of that was sci-fi, and like
Hmm.
Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov is like my favorite. I also read a bunch of like commercial tie-in fiction with like franchises, like Star Wars
Sure.
stuff,
Yeah.
video game stuff that I was a fan of. And it wasn't until my brother got like really into the Game of Thrones stuff that he convinced me to read those. Then I was desperate for more epic fantasy. I found Malazan,
Yeah.
and yeah, and then I read and reread Malazan a bit, read
Yeah.
some other epic fantasy, but then yeah, around the time I got on BookTube, I had Thomas Covenant at the top of the list of those series that I needed to get to at some point, but kind of it just never happened that it was the one that I picked up next.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, thank you so much for
Well,
kind of giving me that extra little push.
I'm glad I could do that for you.
Yeah.
But for me, this was back in the 80s. I I was reading Dungeons and Dragons novels,
Okay.
Dragonlance and Forgotten Realms stuff that was out, back then. I was a big D&D player, still am, and um, so I always saw this on the shelf, the Lord Fowl's Bane and all that stuff, and I'm gonna get to those. And finally, I did. I just picked it up, and I was, only 20, 21 years old. Um, and it was a bit of a shock to the system when I picked up Lord Fowl's Bane and read that for the first time. Um, his his prose is a bit more involved, a bit more you know, not as easy to read as say, like a Dragonlance or what have you. Um, and so I uh I read the first one, but I was amazed at some of the ideas that he had. And I was, of course, thinking about the ideas in the book as, towards a D&D setting, which
Hmm.
you can do that with these stories because the land and the land that Donaldson invented here. And so a lot of the other stuff I think kind of went over my head being such a young man at the time. Um, and then as time went on, I read the whole first six books. Um, and as I got into the second trilogy, things started to click a little more, and I realized like, wow, this is really deep stuff. Really, really a little bit beyond what I'm reading in the D&D novel and stuff like that. But I didn't understand it, yeah, because I haven't even gone to college yet, so it's just my reading level wasn't quite there, and but I loved it anyways. There was a lot of cool ideas, a lot of neat stuff in there, and then about 15 years later, say, I reread them and I was blown away. Uh, this time I was blown away by the deep themes in there, by the subverting of all those things. I understood what subverting a trope was, and I was blown away by everything he was looking to accomplish with this series, and it led me into more stuff like Malazan and uh, and so on, and so that. But I never forgot it. I never forgot this series. This series was really a big key on my journey into just delving into literature in general, never mind just fantasy literature, but actual, you know, it made me enjoy a lot of things about literature that I love. And it made me enjoy like just some other literature too, like classic literature and stuff. And because he has a very good handle on the English language,
Yeah.
how to use it very well. And so and you recognize that more. The more you read, the more you recognize how good this really is.
I mean, yeah, just based on the first 30 or so pages of this book, that is very little to no fantasy at all. I would have read that book, like what, whatever,
Yeah, right.
what
Yeah.
could have turned into. It was so gripping and so intriguing. Yeah,
Yeah. How does a leper get by in today's
right, right,
society? That would be a
right.
novel in and of itself. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, yeah. So you mentioned, and I'm not, I don't understand the structure like 100%, but from what I understand, it's essentially there's the first trilogy, then there's the second trilogy on those two kind of sets of three books, and kind of a main
Hmm.
set of six books is a pretty cohesive story. And
Hmm.
then there's a follow-up series of four novels as well.
Yes.
I was curious if you could uh, maybe
Yeah.
explain a
Those.
little more of that.
Yeah. Those. The final four novels came. They're called the Last Chronicles of Thomas Covenant. They came out much later.
Okay.
Um, I think the first one was 2004. So that's over 20 years since Lord Fowl's Bane, and those I think one they 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 spanned about 10 years, in between, publication wise, and those were I need to reread those because those were they kind of expanded. They expanded upon the main story, but it seemed at the time when I read them, um, I can't even think of the word. It was they were like expansive um in uh in tone and epicness,
Oh,
and they really gave this like broader look upon this this conflict about Covenant and Lord Fowl and how it worked, and they really there's a lot more psychological exploration going on in those last four novels. Um, and so it's hard to get into it without spoiling
sure.
um spoiling the first six, uh but I think a lot of fans didn't like them as well as these first six.
Okay.
um I liked them a lot because I was just happy to be back there, and I was happy to read more of Donaldson's writing, and I've read everything else he's written too. Um and uh so it for some reason it didn't click with the general, public as much.
Okay.
I'm sure there's still plenty of fans out there. But I liked them. I thought they were great.
Um, and then like how would you say Lord Fal's Bane, like is it pretty representative of what I should be expecting in the next few books, or does he take some pretty big or does he kind of throw some pretty big curveballs in there, or things to
It's fairly representative of the next two. Like
okay,
the next,
okay,
the first trilogy is very tight
okay.
in itself, and you can expect, the story expands and goes where it needs to, but you can expect the um the same kind of tone and the um same kind of exploration of what he's doing. The second trilogy blew me away because he did something wasn't expecting at all. Um, and and he expands on a certain thing that I'm not going to get into now
Okay.
because that would be spoilery for you and everybody else.
Okay.
But yeah, the second trilogy is it's like that's my favorite trilogy of all time. The second trilogy. It's just
Okay.
it really, really it blew me away with what he did there. And I don't know how the general populace feels about the first one against the second one, but that was me, that was peak fantasy right there. Peak literature, really.
So like I get like you mentioned, you're not exactly sure how the general populace feels about which of these books are better or trilogies are better or worse. Uh, when you first picked these up, was there or did you have a kind of a group that was also reading them or a group of friends that was into them or okay. Yeah.
No,
Uh,
this is way back in the early 90s, and we didn't have, of course, internet, and we didn't have
Sure, yeah, yeah.
uh no, it was just me. That was my reading time, my bubble time, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would tell my friends about these books, and I would I would incorporate a lot of the stuff in these books in my gaming.
Okay, yeah.
I used to do that because I was a dungeon master, and so I would steal ideas from it and use certain things from it. And um, but yeah, I didn't have any kind of feedback, uh,
Okay.
you know, when it came to that stuff. And some of my friends read a lot of the D&D books and stuff like that, so I had plenty of that going on. But
Yeah.
yeah, this was a unique experience.
Mhm. And I guess how are you finding I guess the way that these books are talked about online nowadays? I mean, they're still not being talked about as much as some of the big series, but when you do see discussions or reviews pop up, I guess what's your take on those?
Um, I haven't seen much at all,
Okay, yeah, yeah.
to be honest with you. I'm like one of the few champions I know about about this series. And that was surprising in and of itself when I started. I was like, how come nobody's talking about Donaldson?
Uh,
I was like, wow, especially considering it was because of him that I picked up Erickson. Like you see
sure,
his
yeah.
name on the as the the quotes on the front there,
Right, right.
on some of the books in the bookstore, and I was like, wow, nobody's really discussing Donaldson. I get it because there was a lot of other 80s stuff that people didn't discuss either,
Right, right.
Booktube's a rather new thing comparatively, and so that it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
Maybe it had its day, but hey, let's bring it back.
Yeah. Yeah. Yes, let's. I think it is sort of interesting. Again, still at this point in the video, I'm trying to stay away from spoiler stuff, but there is definitely a darker edge to these. And so much of recent fantasy kind of fandom has really been drawn to the darker stuff, the kind of anti-hero sort of thing. But even not at the ICFA where we met, but a couple years earlier, I was speaking with someone, and this other they were a scholar and they told me that they read the first 100 pages of this and at first they were loving it and then they hit a certain scene and they just had to put the book down and move on to something else and I thought that was really interesting and I kind of like that conversation has been in the back of my mind leading up to when I was going to start reading this, and now that I've at least read the first one and seen what they were talking about, or I assume the plot details that they were referencing.
Mm.
Um, I wonder if maybe. that's happened to a number of people. Maybe they've picked it up and gotten to certain moments. We can get more into specifics about that later, but yeah, I don't know that's one of my only guesses. I really
Yeah,
don't know, which is a shame because I think it does kind of sell short a little bit what's
yeah,
I
it
guess
does.
what's being explored there. But yeah,
Yeah.
again,
No, no,
no,
you're right. I hear people all the time talk about that scene, um and it's amazing that, like, compared to the adult fantasy we get today,
right, right,
it's like barely even
right,
uh like, I don't think it would register today the way it did back then. I think this series was a shock to the fantasy system of the time.
right, right,
And he got he got a lot of critical praise, and the book sold a lot because of that when it first came out. Um, but a lot of people bounced off of it, um, originally because of that, because what you said,
yeah,
there, and I think that's completely unfair to the book and unfair to the series, uh,
right,
because it doesn't look into the consequences later on,
hmm,
and we can get further into that as we go along
yeah,
here, but uh, but but Game of Thrones,
right,
the
right,
big elephant in the room, Game of Thrones, a Song of Ice and Fire has just so much more, and it's not all explored the way that this is,
right,
and
right,
it doesn't give it the same power and the same weight.
yeah,
And there's a few things explored in A Song of Ice and Fire, but not to the extent that the consequences. And
right,
this is 20 years earlier than the game.
right, yeah. Anyway, I can already tell with one book that those consequences, like, it's not that certain shocking things just happen in the book, but
Right.
they're returned to with a purpose, like
Hmm.
very much, and it's you can't finish the book and say, oh, it's kind of weird that that one thing happened early on and
Yeah.
then nothing else. Like you can't say that because it's such a presence, such a
Yeah.
constant kind of thing being explored. Yeah, again, sorry that maybe we could just kind of dive into spoilers since we've been
Yeah.
beating around this
Um,
one thing. Before we do, though, I guess, is there any kind of last minute sales pitch you'd like to give to anyone watching this who's about to,
oh,
leave the
jeez.
video for starting the series?
Um, well, one thing on that last point, I
Uh-huh.
don't know if I'm articulating it as best as I can, but there are plenty of videos out there where Janie Wirtz explains it, and
Oh,
she does a fantastic job of explaining it. And so I would ask Janie Wirtz; she'll tell
yeah.
you all about this. But
Okay.
but the sales pitch, I guess, if you like literary style of writing, uh, like Erickson, like Janie Wirtz, you're gonna like this. This is they both of those authors look up to Donaldson, um, as a writer, and for a good reason. And so that, I mean, I don't know what else you could say besides that.
Right. All right. Thanks. So now I think we are going to pivot into spoilers. We'll talk more about specific things that happen in book one. If you like to answer something, if you need to get a little spoilery about the next few books in the series, I personally don't mind that. But as long as the conversation, like it's clearly explain that you're talking about something that
Yeah.
I haven't even gotten to. I think that's fine. But I'd like to avoid anything about how the third book ends or like any big
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
But if you need to mention a character's name that's prominent in later books or something like that, I'm not gonna mind that. But yeah, spoiler warning starting now for at least this first book. Yeah. Okay. So, I guess we'll build kind of right off of what we were just talking about because it is such a, and I think because I saw this point raised so much before I started this one, and I was a little, I don't know if nervous is the right word. I mean, excited is a weird word, but that's kind of how I felt. Um, for anyone watching who hasn't read the book and doesn't mind spoilers, this scene in question that we're kind of referring to, or maybe if it's been a while for you, early on after Thomas Covenant is pulled into this world, he befriends a young teenage girl and she introduces him to her culture. Her name's Lena, and there's a moment where they're by like a riverbed or something, and he rapes her in that moment. And then she goes back to her village, and he's thinking, "Oh, I've done this horrible thing, and she's gonna go tell everyone, and they're gonna come kill me now." But then she keeps the secret of this horrible thing that he did to her because they recognize he's this sort of prophetic kind of return of a extremely powerful figure who could save the Earth. And then throughout the whole, at least this whole first book, he's grappling with his own kind of sense of villainy, his own evil deeds, but also with the, I guess, context that this at various points in time, he thinks this all might be a dream, a total, like
Hmm.
a literal fantasy in his head. So, what's real, what's not real, regardless of whether it's real or not, at least in this dream world, he did this thing to this young woman. That's kind of the scene that we were alluding to there. Yeah, I guess with the more kind of specific details on the table, any comments or any follow up about your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, it's really important to get the context
Yeah,
of who Thomas Covenant is at the beginning of this
right.
book, because um, here's a guy stricken with leprosy, and he goes through these rituals every day. He's got to check his, what do they call it? The
Is VSE or V
VSE,
for,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah, visual something
like
something, yeah,
self-examination or
self-examination.
yeah,
That's it,
yeah.
yeah, and that's really key to who he is, and he has to do that every day because he could kill himself just by not recognizing that he's bleeding out or something like that. And so when he gets to this land, um, he doesn't believe he's there. He doesn't
Right.
believe in the land. He doesn't even believe anything that's going on. And this girl he meets is so nice to him, uh, where in the real world, nobody's nice to him. They want him to get the hell out of town. They don't want him to be there. They don't, nobody wants to see him. People yell at him when he shows up to pay a bill somewhere. And
They pay his bills so he doesn't have to show up.
yeah, and when he does, he gets yelled at. And so, um, the he is outcast. He's unclean, and that's like his main one of the things at the beginning of the book, which they always repeat, outcast, unclean, but
Yeah,
but um, so he meets these people who are so nice to him. They think he's a hero. They think he is Beric Half Hand returned, this ancient hero from a long time ago, and she gives him something. She heals him. All of a sudden he can feel. All of a sudden he can everything is alive, and he has all this, you know, potency basically,
yeah.
and it drives him to that point with that we at the end of chapter 7 where he rapes Lena, and the scene itself is so it's like literally like 15 sentences at the most,
Yeah,
and um and it leaves a lot to to the imagination as far as what actually happens, you know.
Right, right.
It's a lot of it is off screen, so to speak, and it happens, and then he, as soon as it happens, he goes to this this river. He washes everything off as if nothing had happened. He actually throws up into the river, and he
Yeah.
washes everything off as if nothing had happened. As in his mind, the dream world, he can't he can't uh correlate this reality with what's going on. Him being healed, a full person who can feel, and and then he beats himself up over it for the rest of the book.
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, um, like you said, like he thinks that the village is because he basically becomes aware again, and he thinks people are going to come after him and stuff like
Yeah.
that, and then they don't. Um, except for one guy we can talk
Right, right, yeah.
about. Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I think like when I first got to that scene, I was like, okay, so this is what everyone's been telling me about or warning me about. Or yeah, this is what it is. And I read it and I was like, okay, I could see that definitely unsettling pretty much anyone who reads it. It is
Yep.
pretty uncomfortable. But also at this point we're already quite uncomfortable because we're so like cautious and like on edge about how's he gonna hurt himself. Donaldson has like made us so sort of anxious with Covenant about his VSE stuff and about his leprosy. That this is just yet another like, oh my gosh, and now here's this other thing that we have to kind of contend with or pile on. Um, and then slowly I started to kind of rethink, I don't know, or just think about what it does to the idea of the hero and how I mean, he's the most reluctant hero I've ever read about. And so him being as, in some instances, vile, in other instances, just like saying rude things, doing that throughout the whole thing, it's sort of like his sort of rejection of this hero status that was like thrown at him. Or that he was pulled into. Uh, I don't know, and it also it got me to really like. I think it creates an extraordinary amount of distance between Covenant and the reader, and I think that's really important for what Donaldson's doing here.
Yep.
I think the leprosy already creates that distance because it's something that most of us are never really going to experience. But then this makes you want to distance yourself a little bit more from the protagonist, which is a
Hmm.
really kind of original and kind of a new way to read, especially a fantasy book when the hero is the protagonist. But yeah, so those are
Yeah.
kind of my initial thoughts of like thinking, okay, so why include this? What's being explored? Where might he take this? That was my immediate reaction.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know how that compares to your reaction or
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it creates distance, um, but it also creates dissonance
yeah.
because because it's all his point of view, the whole book. So you don't want to be this guy's friend. He's a jerk.
Uh-huh.
Um, understandable jerk sometimes, but he is a jerk, and you don't want to be his friends, but it's all his point of view. So you have no choice but to see what he sees. And that's kind of what the beauty of what Donaldson's doing here is he's forcing you to be uncomfortable. He's
Yeah.
forcing you to meet because we meet a lot of cool characters,
Oh,
and so he's forcing you to meet, these wonderful people at Mithelstone, and in this like idyllic almost way of life that they have, and he's forcing you to meet Foam Follower,
mhm.
like one of the funnest
Love them.
characters
Yeah.
ever, right? And he's forcing you to meet the Blood Guard, the Banner, and the
Mhm.
Lords, and you're but you're meeting them through his perspective, and you want to like these guys more than you like Tom Covenant.
Hmm.
And I think that's on purpose.
Right, right.
It's to give this land more beauty, more more attraction to the reader than what Covenant has. And that creates a dissonance in the reader as well. And it keeps that uncomfortableness going.
Yeah, yeah. And yeah, I love that like one of the first secondary character or like side characters that we meet, or not that we meet right after this moment, but that we get to know a little better is Lena's mother, who is tasked or is charged with escorting Covenant north. And at first, there's that tension of she doesn't know what he did, or maybe she does, but we don't think she does at first. And then I forget the character's name, but
Oh yeah.
like Lena's betrothed, this young
Yes.
man, he's following them, and he tries to attack Covenant, and reveals what Covenant did, or it spells it out, and that she still has this mission that she has to fulfill, and I'm rooting for her, but I hate Coven, or I don't hate him. I don't know if hate's the right word, but like,
Yeah. Oh,
I'm just
he
like,
just
oh, me away from him. Yeah,
yeah. Yeah, he's well he the young man, I think like I said, I forget his name, but uh he calls him Raver, and that's a
yeah,
key term that's going to resonate throughout the rest of the series. Um and so we get that terminology because Raver's very important. And so that um it kind of in the eyes of somebody who's been hurt like he has, that puts Covenant in a different category than the hero of the ages,
right,
the Barrack Halfhand. And so, that's something that is in the back of your mind as you're going through the book as well. Because everybody else is just like, oh, he resembles, this hero.
right.
And of course,
It's a little odd, but that's okay.
yeah, and he has this ring,
Right.
you
Yeah.
know.
I got And so I just got married last year, and I got a white gold ring, and I hadn't read the series, so you're white gold.
Yep, me too.
Yeah. I was like, oh
So
wow, superpower.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're all set if we head there. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I think let's talk about some of those other characters. Like you mentioned, Foam Follower. I think one of my favorite, I guess, character archetypes is sort of the gentle giant uh, t sort, and that's basically what Foam Follower is introduced as, at least at first. So yeah, I love that character. I'm
Yeah.
curious your thoughts on him.
Oh yeah, I absolutely adored Foam Faller right off the bat. Um, he was just the best, and I haven't met a person yet who doesn't like Foam.
Okay, yeah, yeah,
Um, yeah, it's because he's kind of the foil to Covenant. No matter what
Mhm.
Covenant says, no matter all the rude things he says, and you know, Foam just comes out with this eternal optimism
Yeah,
and these wise giant sayings
yeah,
that just at times lift you up out of the morass that you may get into just being in Covenant's head.
right.
Um, they lift you up out of that, and sometimes they're just um, words of wisdom. Sometimes they're just beautiful sayings that 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 Donaldson writes for him, and it really is just a nice, like I said, a foil to
Uh-huh.
Covenant's character. and he
Yeah.
plays an important role.
Okay. Good. Yeah, it's sort of like Thomas Covenant hates himself so much, but Phone Follower is kind of incapable of hating him as anyone as much as Thomas hates himself. Yeah, and also I feel like it is like he's Thomas Covenant, the unbeliever,
Hmm.
because he doesn't believe anything going on, or he struggles to believe. Like, but towards the end, he's starting to kind of question which was more real, this dream world or where he came from. But he's still very much an unbeliever because, yeah, he's still very skeptical about everything. Um, for Phone Follower, he's one of the only other characters who doesn't seem that concerned with convincing Thomas Covenant that he's wrong. He's sort of just
Mm.
thinking, yeah, you can feel how you feel about this world, but come on, buddy, have some spirits, like come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah.
We're
But
hanging out. Right now
yeah,
we're in the forest, so yeah,
yeah,
I just really like that attitude.
yeah. And he teaches Covenant a lot of stuff. As I think he like when he did the what he called the Kimura, where he
Yeah,
purposely puts his hands in the fire,
yeah.
and that is to feel pain in order to purge his, because he was sad about somebody
Killing them.
dying.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
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 or
yeah,
killing us. Yeah, something like
yeah.
that. He was, and it was kind of like an atonement,
Hmm.
and
Yeah,
it was a ritual for him to purge himself of that, and I think that was pretty good symbolism for what um Covenant needed to do and was refusing to do in a lot of cases.
yeah, sure.
So just through his sheer stubbornness.
Yeah,
Um, so Phone Follower served as a lot of symbolism for what Covenant needed to either do or go through psychologically in order to help him get through this ordeal. I like how he used Phone Follower a lot.
yeah. I guess with Covenant's sort of atonement or his journey to as maybe admit to things he has to at least help to heal or help to make better. Um, I think my favorite moment from the book, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a lot of people's favorite moment, but it's with the when they're with the Ranihan. I don't know if that's the pronunciation.
Yeah.
The horses, and all of the horses come out and they like bow to him, or they
Right.
swear their loyalty to him, and he says, no, there's this girl who I attacked and I need you to go visit her because um she loves your culture, and or she loves
Yeah, yeah,
this
yeah,
region, and
yeah.
she dreams about the horses, and um obviously that's not enough. I don't know what would be enough to like totally absolve him of anything or of his evil doing, but just like that moment of him, I don't know, like I guess for the first time recognizing a certain amount of power that he has in the world and genuinely like doing something positive with it. Um, Granted, there is also sort of like the no one should be master of that many horses kind of thing. So there is a little bit
Hmm.
of a scary sort of dark edge to that moment. I don't know
Yeah,
if that comes into play later. But yeah, I guess
yeah.
your thoughts on.
It all comes into play later, but
Uh,
the one thing that um somebody pointed out, if I think it was Lord Morham,
mhm.
um, Lord Morham exclaimed to him, he said, "You fear power more than you weakness."
Yeah,
And Covenant agreed. He's like, "Yes." And his main thing, once again, goes back to the beginning of the book, where he just wants to survive, and he has to do these rituals to survive. And getting more power can lead to him being lax about what he has to do to survive,
yeah,
because like it's a common thing for power to go to your head, but that can also lead to him being not careful about what he's doing with himself.
Right.
And so he told Morham, he's like, I just want to survive. I don't want this. And I think the in his way he wanted those because those horses were bowing to him, because of the ring, because of the white gold,
Right, right, yeah.
um, and he didn't want that because he didn't want the power, that kind of power, and he was trying to. He had the guilt of what he did, and so sending the horses back, he was hoping to avoid that responsibility, avoid that power, and avoid the responsibility of what he did too. And so yeah, there's a lot to take out of that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
really just really powerful stuff. Yeah.
Are there any moments that like really stand out to you that you think back on fondly from this one?
Um, the what the hell was it?
Sorry, I know I'm asking you to kind of
Yeah,
go back a bit. Yeah.
it's 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 tough because I was just trying to skim through it, but I mean that's a big one. The horses. I mean, I love the I love the he because he introduced us to so many different cultures in this one
Yeah.
small section of land here because we had the stone down people, we had the lords of Revelstone,
Right.
we had the hordes, the people who didn't take care of the horses, but
The
the
row
ride
or
the ropes and the
yeah.
what was
Blanking on
that?
the names of some of these things.
Yeah, I forget
There's a glossary.
what their people were called, but
Uh,
you had them, and then of course you had the Ranyan, the horses there, and you had the
yeah,
Harachai.
the ramen are the people and the Rani
Yes,
are horses, yeah.
yeah, and you had the Harachai, which made
Uh-huh.
up the Blood Guard. I found those guys fascinating.
Yeah.
Um, have like what was it? The quote I had there. Oh, when Banner was telling him about them, about their oath to the
Uh-huh.
lords, and
Everything they
he
give up.
said he asked them, "Is that how things are done in the land? Whenever you're in trouble, you just do the impossible." I thought that was a great line,
Yeah.
and because these people have this oath
Uh-huh.
to basically live forever to serve these lords and do impossible things, and I found that fascinating. I couldn't get over that. I was like, wow, that is so cool. And of course I stole that to put in one of my games. I had to.
Yeah, no, that whole group is so cool. And at first I was thinking, oh, they're almost like I- they sort of dehumanize themselves, or like they get rid of a lot of the at first that's what it seems like. They get rid of a lot of the yeah, kind of like the what makes life worth living sort of sort of parts of themselves to live forever and serve the lords.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean just that whole section when they're at that oh, I'm blanking on the name of the city too, or the old, but the where the lords are, like where the
Oh, Revelstone.
Revelstone, thanks. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. When they're at Revelstone, just the way the whole city's described and all the different
Yeah.
cultures there. It's all. I mean, like you said a little bit ago, just the setting and all of the different cultures and different places that we're introduced to in such a small space. It's like it's so there's so much, and it's like our focus is driven towards like being amazed and impressed by all of these things because we're kind of driven away from Thomas Cover or from the person
Right.
who we're seeing it through. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
also one of my favorite like funny scenes was they come out of like the forest and this is like right before they meet the horses and and the ramen, and Covenant, he's throwing a bit of a fit because everyone else seemed to get through the forest unscathed, but his white robes have all of these green mossy stains on them, and he's like, "How did I not avoid any of this stuff?" And he goes to the river and he's trying to clean up his cloak, and of course, I mean, part of that is his like he should be clean in case there's infection or so he
Hmm.
doesn't get sick or whatever. Um, but yeah, I just love his frustration of how did the forest somehow know to pick on me or to like, bother me. I love that part.
Yeah. And that's an important point is that every time he comes across something that looks to overwhelm him with either amazement or even hardship, he always retreats back into
Mhm.
his ritual stuff
Yeah.
like that. And that's you know, it's just and it's so important because it's with the his how he was set up in the beginning and that travels throughout the whole story in how he approaches things um and how he overcomes things as well, and how it led to that kind of stubbornness led to what he did at the end by um summoning the dudes or whatever they were.
Yeah,
Uh, uh
the lion, flame
Lion,
lion
yeah,
things. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so and in him getting the staff and dealing with everything that happened at the end.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know if this gets into too many spoilers, but so there's like the seven books of are they like the books of law or something like that?
Yeah,
They
yeah.
have or books of lore, and they have the
Lore,
one,
yeah.
and at the end of this in the mountain they find the second one. Do they like does that continue each book they find another book of or I don't know if that
uh
gets into too many
I
spoilers.
uh I uh I shall never.
Okay.
uh yeah, the staff of law
Mhm.
is an important thing. That
Okay.
that's an important item. And yeah, they there's definitely more lore coming down the pipeline.
Okay. All right, cool.
You can guarantee that. And you probably would have suspected that. But the and there's also the consequences for what he did also carries on through.
Okay.
That is definitely not something that gets shunted aside. Oh, this book's over. Let's forget about it. No, it it yeah, it doesn't go away. But the in the focus being on Covenant mostly continues.
Okay.
Uh, but there will be a little bit of variance coming up, but for good reason. You'll see how that works too. Uh, yeah, but yeah, other than that, I can't really say more
Sure.
than that.
I was curious to hear your thoughts on the villains, the baddies of the book. Drool Rockworm and Lord Fowl. Yeah, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them.
Yeah, Lord Fowl, it's hard to talk about him.
Okay, yeah.
Uh,
Well, yeah, because he's not really on the page or not in any kind of rarely
yeah,
in any kind of a like physical way, like or immediate way.
yeah.
In this first book, at least. Yeah.
Other than to say that that concept of Lord Fowl, his aspect, and what he represents, and what he represents, and how it has meaning for his covenant, that is basically the crux of the series.
Okay.
How it gets explored a lot down the line. But other than that, it's hard to really say anything else about him. Um, but he's also the the fantasy big bad.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's so so different than anything else. Um, at this point, he might. I don't know. I don't know what he seems to you at this point, but you
He
know,
seems confusing or
uh,
puzzling because he pulls Thomas Coven into this world, or I guess maybe not. Maybe it's the individual who sent him from the real world who had the sign. Some common when Thomas Covenant arrives in the land, he's first talking with Lord Fowl. And
mhm,
Lord Fowl says you have to stop Drool of Rockworm. You have to take the Staff of Law from him, which is what all the heroes want to do as well. Um, and I guess there's like that kind of there's that idea that whatever like Drool Rockworm's kind of a chaos agent, and no one really knows what damage he'll cause in the land. And whatever it is, it's not what the lords want, and it's not what Lord Fowl wants. Um, but there's no real I I don't know there's no real explanation of why Lord Fowl is so invested in Covenant, or why he has to make sure that Drool Rockworm can't keep this. Because if Fowl was like the big bad, typical of other fantasies, you'd think he'd kind of love the destruction and chaos that Drool Rockworm is causing. Maybe he needs the Staff of Law to be with certain people for some reason or another. I don't know, but that's kind of those are my immediate impressions of him. Yeah.
yeah. Well,
Him, I don't know. Yeah.
those are all good questions.
Okay. Okay.
And those are all good questions. There's definitely it's not just a at this point you should realize it's not just a Sauron figure,
Right, right.
so but beyond that, can't say anything, but those are good questions to keep in mind as you're moving along. Definitely, yeah. And yeah, and you can even see that I think at some point Covenant feels sorry for Drew,
Yeah.
um, and it's in a very similar manner that we feel sorry for Gollum at certain
Uh,
points, in the
okay,
Lord of
yeah,
the Rings,
okay.
so
Yeah.
there is that parallel.
Right, right. Do you think do you think most readers today would like start reading this, and would they pick up on the Lord of the Rings, like some of the Lord of the Rings similarities as a pro or a con? Do you think? And I do
Um,
think we've discussed plenty of things that are wildly different, and original and totally distinct from Lord of the Rings. So,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. But I'm curious if you think some might start this series and say, two Lord of the Rings a year or something like that.
Um, well, it depends on what the reader's looking for, really,
Right. Right.
because some people might. I mean, what is the same? Like, what is similar to Lord of the Rings, or what is he at least presenting as similar right
Right. Right.
now? But there's a ring.
A ring, a Gollum-esque figure.
Yeah. Uh,
That's
there's
yeah.
there is a fellowship of sorts that kind
Right.
of
Right. Right.
rides out from
Right.
Revelstone and
Right.
goes on this mission. Um, so you have that. Um, yeah. So I would suppose that if somebody is looking to is wants those things, then they're gonna be like, okay, this feels similar, and that puts me in a happy place or whatever.
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but I think the beauty, I guess, of what Tolkien did with his world,
Mhm.
you will find that in here if that's what you like. Because the land is a beautiful place, and it um it does resonate with that similar beauty in the creatures that live there have that reverence for where they live. similar to Middle Earth,
Right.
and the hobbits and the elves. They have a reverence for the where they live and the beauty that they live in. The residents of the land have that similar beauty, and that is what Thomas Covenant is contrasting. That is
Yeah.
what he's, that is the difference in Lord of the Rings. You don't in Lord of the Rings, you don't have the character that is they're trying to save it,
Right. Right.
um, and the Sauron is trying to destroy it, and it's pretty black and white there. Whereas here, Covenant is the contrast. You don't know what to make of that,
Yeah.
and we don't know what Lord purpose is at this point either.
Right. Right.
Um, so that is the difference.
Yeah. I really like what you said about kind of the beauty of the land, and I think like that's one of the most refreshing and kind of yeah, just one of the most refreshing, nicest things about reading these in the midst of all the other things I've been reading lately. I think the only other authors that I've read who've published books recently, that kind of pay a decent amount of page time to describing the land and talking about the health of the environment and the beauty of the landscape, are probably like Janny Wirtz and Philip Chase probably still do this. I don't know of really many other modern fantasy authors who are still doing this like that to that degree. I don't know if there's others that jump to your mind.
Mm,
I mean, I guess I should say I know Donaldson's still writing fantasy stuff, so I don't know if his recent stuff is
yeah.
has as much focus on the vistas and that type of description. But
Yeah. I mean, Wirtz definitely. That like I'm in book of 10 of her series right now,
yeah,
and she's still doing it. So it's yeah, she definitely does it well. And uh um yeah, I don't know who else. I mean, yeah, I guess yeah, Chase is a good example um of that. And he wears his influence on his sleeve when it comes to
yeah,
Tolkien. But yeah, glimpses of it, but done to this level, yeah, not much. I don't,
yeah,
not that I know of, anyways. I'm sure
sure.
I haven't read Ted Williams, so maybe I haven't
Oh yeah,
read.
yeah.
I haven't read. I like. Yeah, I mean, I read Wheel of Time, but I wouldn't
Oh
say it.
yeah.
I wouldn't say it matches as far as
Yeah,
it
I read
has
the first
has
nine Wheel of
moments.
Time or so, but I don't know that I ever felt a particular awe or like majesty about the land or Randland, um, like I did with
Yeah,
Donaldson.
I mean that's good points, um, but I didn't get that same feeling that the uh the world in Wheel of Time had that sense of beauty that sublime. That's the word I'm looking
Yeah,
for.
yeah, okay,
You
yeah.
know,
Yeah.
that's that sense of the sublime that I was looking for. Yeah. Um, yeah. I mean, the world's well thought out, and it's cool, and it has a lot of really
Right,
nice,
right, yeah.
really cool stuff. Same with the Song of Ice and Fire. It has
Yeah,
awesome,
right.
awesome, really cool stuff going on. But yeah, that sense of the sublime that comes across to the people living there, um, is really apparent in here, and is indicative of the Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know that I have any other like immediate questions jumping to mind about the book. Is there anything that you really want to make sure we talk about with Lord Fellsbane or
Um, well, keep in mind, um, you gotta ask yourself the questions. I guess at Lord Fowl's Bane, what is his Bane?
Mhm.
You know, something to think about going forward.
Okay,
because
yeah.
it's not clearly explained.
Yeah.
There's hints given, but it's not clearly explained. Um, and uh, the and at this point, of course, Covenant is the unbeliever. He doesn't believe this. He wants to survive. That's his goal. Um, and so it those are all key aspects of think about going forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess maybe I should ask. So, like everything with Lord Kevin, which is interesting, and that kind of threw me a little bit that there's a Lord Kevin. I don't know, just that name is doesn't sound quite as epic as some of the other stuff.
Yeah.
But Kevin sounds like he sort of did a uh, factory reset on the land because things weren't working out, and he
Yeah, that's right.
destroyed everything so that it could grow back better, to sort of save everything. It's sort of the sense I was getting. And so I'm really curious to see how that like what's the connection between that and whatever Lord Fowl wants to happen to the land? Because you'd almost think Lord Fowl would want to destroy it if he was a Sauron or something. But but also, I guess there's some of the mythology that was explained. I don't remember all of it exactly,
Yeah.
but that Lord Fowl was sort of trapped down here, whereas the other um, deity or powerful like his counterpart was not trapped down in the land.
Mhm.
Again, I might be getting some of the mythology stuff wrong because I'm sure Foam Follower explains it a little bit, and then the lords I know describe things a little bit too, but um and I'm sure
Yeah.
it'll come back up in the next books.
Yeah, it will. A lot of lore is to come.
Okay.
That lands drop is important.
Okay. Okay.
Um, it yeah, you mentioned there is a reason for that. Uh, and I think it's like a you're right. There's a reason why Lord Fowl is where he is. And so that yeah, that all comes up.
Okay. Okay.
Um, it'll come up as the series goes on. There's more lore, there's more stuff to delve into as far as that goes. Yeah.
I think I was also a little bit surprised that the last like couple pages of the book is a sort of Wizard of Oz, Dorothy's back from Oz kind of moment, where
Oh
he
yeah.
like wakes up in the hospital. I
Yeah.
don't know why, but I was expecting, oh, he'll be stuck here through the at least the trilogy, and for him to like wake up in the hospital again at the end of the book, I was like, oh, okay, so I guess we're gonna maybe then have to come back again for the next
Yes.
one.
Oh
Yeah.
yes. No, that's actually yeah, that's a good point because it but him going back, of course, leads him to the conclusion that of unbelief, right?
Right,
Like
right. He's like,
like
oh, so it
I'm
was
back.
a dream.
I'm getting dropped off at my house. The doctor didn't want me to stay in the hospital, even though he should for observation. He's like,
Right,
no, no, I mean, I should observe you, but please leave. And
right.
so he gets thrown back to his house, and the uh, but that's really interesting because it's I don't know if you read Donaldson's essay on epic fantasy literature
I haven't,
from the New
no.
York Times. In that essay, he speaks about epic fantasy being important for people to read because it is the literature of reintegration. When you when you read fantasy, you're diving into this make believe world, this type of stuff, and when you're done, you reintegrate yourself into life, into reality. Um, what he's doing here with Covenant's reintegrating himself into his life.
Sure.
So as the reader, we're getting that twice because we're getting it when Covenant does it, and then we're getting it when we're done,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know? And so he's really playing with that aspect of fantasy. And it becomes more than just a portal fantasy. It becomes I think it surpasses because like it's not like what's that Lion Witch Wardrobe series here? Um
the
C.S.
what was
Lewis,
it?
the C.S. Lewis series,
Oh yeah, not
you know,
Narnia. Yeah, yeah.
Narnia, yeah, where the kids they go through a wardrobe. That's a portal fantasy, right?
Right, right.
Um, but this surpasses that in that not only as Covenant reintegrating himself with the reality of what is ostensibly our Earth, and we also have to reintegrate ourselves once we are done reading it. And it's very, it's very clever. It's very, um, it's a bit more deeper, you know.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, yeah. It kind of like highlights, yes, there's this fantasy made up setting that's the one kind of level of the narrative, that's the land. And then above that is modern or not modern, like I guess 1970s
Right.
America. And but like by doing this and just the way he writes it, it's sort of like, well, that reality is just as real as the land reality. And because we're the reader outside of both of those experiences. So yeah, it really kind of helps our minds play around with that in a way that, like you said, the the wardrobe doesn't really do
Right.
in Narnia. Yeah.
Yeah. Another trope he was subverting, basically.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Um, I think that might be all that I have to talk about. I've kept you for a little over an hour
Cool.
now. But yeah, anything you want to say before we go?
No, no, I gotta stop coming up with something else. But
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you so much for coming on my channel, and I'll link your channel down below too. For anyone watching this, if you're not familiar with Jarrod's channel, please go check it out. Wonderful videos there. But yeah, I look forward to maybe doing more of these as I get a little further in the series. This summer, I probably have time for Earth War and Power That Preserves, just those next two. Then the semester starts, and then I might not have time to get back to it until next summer, but we'll see. Maybe one of my classes is a fantasy theory class, so one of my that professor might understand if I need to read some Donaldson instead of
you
what
go.
we'll be doing in there. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you again, and thank you everyone for watching.
Thanks so much for having me. This is
Of
great.
course. Bye.